Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the QTech Connection. I am your host, Andres, and with me today is my co-host,
Mallory.
and episode 10. Wow, we made it. 10 episodes. How are you feeling?
Kind of unbelievable. It's been a journey. It was a crazy idea, and we actually are making it happen.
Hey, we got to episode 10. I didn't think we're
Yeah.
gonna make it. I didn't think we're gonna make it past one. So I know we've missed some schedules here and there, but dear listeners, it's been a little hectic. Summertime is usually one of our busiest time for IT and such. So we do apologize for that. And today's episode's maybe one that you all are familiar with. Today's episode is the challenges of hiring and working with family in a business setting. So
The spicy.
we're going to be talking
subject.
about how is it to work with family, not just here at QTech, but any experience that we've shared. Because I've worked on different places with family members, companies that they own. My own mother had her own company at one point, and I worked with her, and all those things. The pros and cons that come with working with family members. So let's get started. Let's start with the pros and cons. What is a pro of hiring a family member? For me, it kind of goes with you're hiring somebody you trust. Somebody that well. If it's your brother, your sister, your parents, a cousin, you already have a relationship and you have an understanding who this person is, and they can bring a sense of calmness or trust, knowing that they're going to have your best benefit going forward. How about you, Mallory? What's a pro that you've experienced with a business family member arrangement?
Pro is that you're hiring someone that you know their profile, right? So you know their capabilities, you know their weaknesses. You're not as blinded as with a stranger. So you feel a little bit safer. You feel a little bit safer for having someone. Oh, okay, it's someone that's my blood, it's someone that is my family. But I don't have too many pros. I'm gonna be super honest. I am not a pro family co-working environment at all. Don't like it. It's just not my thing. Yeah. So we can move on to the next.
No,
question.
it's interesting because as I was just starting with my pros, where you have that trust, where you have that environment, where you have those things, it's important to have that, and that's what a family member might bring to the table. It doesn't mean that it's all roses and sunrise and sunsets and rainbows and things like that. There's always, like anything in life, there's always a con that comes attached to it. And not all family members might have the best interest for you. There's always jealousy, just like you experience jealousy with friends and people or unknowns and things like that. There's also family members who, are looking to do a little backstabbing and such. So just like everything in life, just like hiring and a no, there's a 50-50. When you bring somebody, when you look in their resume, you're understanding a piece of paper that is trying to tell you who this person is. The family relationship kind of skips over that resume because you already have a mindset of who they are, but you still might not know deep inside who these individuals really are. And sometimes you hit the mark and sometimes you completely miss. And based on that, you learn. So I'm going to share a quick experience that I've had. Actually, one of my first jobs, if you want to call it jobs, it was when I was little, summer. As you guys know from previous episodes, I grew up with a single mother, and during summer, she didn't know what to do with me. She was always working, so she had to find something to do. So a lot of the times, I got shipped over to my grandparents, who owned the farm that I kind of learned how to get into in nature, and I realized that my calling for nature comes from those experiences in those summers. My uncle at the time, he was starting his construction company. So I started just helping out, family business, helping out, and I started doing construction. I was doing construction and everything else that needed to be done. And I was working with construction here's like, I don't know, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, I don't recall. I know it was in the single digits. And, he will drive me as a regular employee, just because he was my uncle. I get no preferential treatment. And here I went like, oh, here's my uncle. Nope. You're getting those bags of cement, you're getting those bricks, you're moving stuff. And I started, going through, but yeah, I did at the end of the day, I did get professional treatment. So that was my first kind of experience working with family per se, working for my uncle. I learned a lot. I learned things that I still take to this day of, construction and mixing things and concrete and rebar and reinforced and structures and stuff. So it was, again, I always look at what can I learn from these experiences. And then my other experience that I've had was when my mom owned her business. She will take me in the summer, and I earned some extra cash during summer, and again some perks. I never forget my first check that I got at working at her company. I was really good friends with all her coworkers and all the people that work there. And there's this tradition in Cali that when a new hire gets his first paycheck, he has to invite the entire office out for
Oh
lunch.
no, that
So here's
sucks.
this little kid. Again, I was probably like, what, at this point, I was getting close to the teens, the tens, and such. And I am looking at my first paycheck, all proud, and looking at the amount. I don't recall what it was. I'm sure it wasn't a lot, but for me, it was a huge because it was, again, me learning to earn my own keep and earn my own
Hmm.
money. And they were celebrating with me. They were very happy about it. And then they pick up the phone, and there's this famous chicken spot. I can't recall the name. I know it starts with a K, I believe. Um,
Cocorico?
I think so. Yes, yes, yes. They give you the gloves, right? They give you the
Hmm.
gloves and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yes, it's them. Yes,
Cocorico.
yes. Thank you. And they start placing orders, and I start adding it up, and I start crying. When I'm telling you, I start crying. I rush from the garage all the way through the office, and I slam my mom's door, and I sit on the floor bawling. I am crying, and she's like, "What's going on?" So what do? They grab the again, back then there's no wireless, phones and things like that. So they
Hmm.
change phones. They grab a phone that has a really, really long cord. So they sit outside my mom's office ordering more things. And I'm crying
Oh.
more and more and more. And my mom was like, they're playing with you. I don't care. Again, a little kid. I am balling. This is my first check. I don't want to buy anything, blah, blah, blah. This is my money. This is my money. And like the more I argue,
The
the
more they
more
would order.
they will order. So, oh, you know what? I said, how many family chickens? I said one. No, no, no. Let's make it 5 family chickens now, and such. So finally, the order came, and I was pissed. I was crying and hungry. So I'm, dragging myself out to eat,
Hmm.
corner eyeing everybody, and pissed off. And when it was time to pay, no, everybody pitched in. Everybody pitched in. It was a great experience that I had because it's one of the first things that started like kind of teaching me like teamwork, like coming together as an
Mm.
office and looking at it. And I said, oh my God, again, as an outsider looking back to my
Yeah.
memories, when I was little, I was fucking pissed. I was
Excuse the
annoyed.
words.
Excuse the words, but I was. It's funny because I am feeling the emotion that I had back then, how mad I was
Oh
that my
God.
check was being spent by the entire office. But in retrospect, that was one of my first early lessons on teamwork outside of sports.
Mm.
Um, Teamwork was really it clicked there
Yeah.
because after the moment, I shared a meal with my coworkers,
Hmm.
and they made me cry, they made me scream, but yet we were breaking bread together and laughing about it. I became the butt of the joke for I think like for the next month, and it was a great experience. Looking back, it wasn't a great experience then, but looking back to it, it was, and that's another area where I learned a lot. So for me, those early experiences have been great. That's my pros. It set a foundation for me to see family members in a different light, especially your parents. A lot of kids don't get the chance to see their parents work.
Yeah.
They just see them go somewhere, you don't know where they go, and they come back tired, aggravated, in a bad mood, and you don't understand why. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, this gave me a great insight into, dang, like my mom's got to do all this stuff, and she's responsible for this,
Yeah.
and paying people, and managing deliveries, and inventory, and all this crazy stuff. And I'm trying to say the words, I'm trying to translate in my head really fast, but it's just managing the books for the business
Yeah.
as well as the business running. So for me, those elements have been very positive because I believe that's kind of where my seeds started. Seeing my mom work,
Yeah.
making it on her own, and starting her business. I think that kind of what set the foundation for me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Moving over to the cons of hiring family members. What have been some of your downsides that you experienced?
Well, what are your downsizes?
So my downsides have been nepotism. So as I worked at some places early on, some family owned things, just me trying to get the experience. Because I always laugh when somebody's putting out advertisements saying, "Oh, we're hiring," and you call and it's like, "Oh yeah, you need to be 18 years old with 20 years of experience." Like, how's that
Yeah.
possible? But nobody's willing to give you that experience. So you find these jobs where you're able to get in and start the experience. And the aggravating part of working in a family setting for that was you were busting your rear end. You were working day in, day out, really giving it your all. And then you see the owner's kid come in and do nothing. And you have to pick up the slack, or you have to cover because of
Mm.
teamwork, that kind of stuff. And then they're getting the promotions, or they're getting the bonuses, they're getting the benefits. So nepotism for me has been a big one that I've served in some family owned businesses when it comes to that, as well as the backstabbing. We had a dear friend who we helped early on to his business. Again, I always been in computers, so we're setting up his restaurant, nice restaurant, pizza restaurant, and we set it up and everything else. His father got ill, and then his health took a turn for the worse. And the restaurant was owned by the dad. He did not leave a clear will,
Ooh.
and it became a fight between two brothers.
Bet.
And it was so bad that the restaurant was closed for a year and a half while the
Wow.
legal fights back and forth. I believe during this process, the father was in the hospital for a while before he passed. And it's just insane because the greediness, or whatever you want to call it, blinded them so much that it ruined the business. They ended up
Yeah.
having to just abandon it. And because they were not paying rent to a point, all the employees had to leave because nobody was in the restaurant running it and things like that. So it just crumbled. And an
Mm.
investment that their father made, the sacrifice that the father made to grow this business and get it to where it needed to be and where it was, they just let it go to ruin just because they couldn't understand what a 50-50 deal was. They wanted 100%. So yeah, that's my other downsides with working with family, the family drama that can come out of it. That's from
Yeah.
there. So if you have any.
I agree. I agree. Early work experiences, my real work paycheck experiences, that they were really not related with my family at all. It was just me, myself, and I. So, but I do have, like the early learning or early job experiences when I was younger. And one of them was I was I've, I was really bad at math, right? And my dad wanted me to practice math. And he was like, you know what? We're going to ask your grandma's sister to hire you on her little restaurant. It's a very small, they call them in Colombia, they call them corrientazos. So it's like the menu is only like two dishes and they open only at certain hours, but that gets packed, like packed, and it's super cheap too, and it's so delicious. So my father went and was like, "Well, can you guys, I want her, my dad never wanted us to only have the lifestyle of, oh, she's a brat and she doesn't know how to do anything, but also to see where money comes from and that there's effort that you need to put in. So one of the things that he made me do was go into this restaurant and work in a cashier. Let me tell you, that was the most traumatizing job I've ever had in my life. I was not giving the right change ever. I was charging what I was not supposed to charge. And people would come back to me and be like, hey, you charged me the wrong plate. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it was so embarrassing, but it really, really helped me to understand how the money worked. I was what, 8, 9 years old. Then they made me, give out the plates and stuff in rush hour, only in rush hour. And it was a mess. I spilled soups on people. I'll never forget. I spilled un sancocho de gallina on top of this lady's head, and she was wearing her work attire. It was horrible because I burned her and I messed up her hair and I messed up her clothes and I messed up her whole lunch, and it was just horrifying. So, those little challenges, I was like, I don't know how people can do this. I don't want to work. And that was the first one, kind of like learning about, you need to communicate with the chef and then give the order and all of these things. But at that time, I was very young, so I didn't really mind too much about it. And then my other experience was for the first time, how you said there's a lot of children that they see their parents, they get ready and they leave the house and they just randomly come back. And that was my case. I would always say, I wouldn't even see my father leave the house. He was gone by the time we were going to school. And we were going to school at 6 a.m. in the morning. So he was gone at 5 o'clock in the morning. And because he always said, just because I'm the boss doesn't mean that I get to come whenever. I need to be the first one to be in and the last one to leave the office. And that's something that always stuck up to me, because I know that there's many bosses out there that, they start earning money, they start growing, and they don't show up, or they show up places late, and they do whatever they want, and they just tell people what to do, and that's it. Um, my dad wanted me to kind of see how he worked, and it was a really badass experience. It was a really cool experience because I didn't even know how my father's office looked. So I had something completely different in mind. And his office was composed of 3 different floors. He was the last floor. And I was with my nanny, and my nanny was giving me a tour, and I was saying hi to everyone. Obviously, that day, no one worked in that office because I was there. I was talking to everyone in that friggin' place. And I would go into different stations, and my dad had told different sectors of the building to give me a task so I could experience some sort of corporate task that was appropriate for a little girl. So the first one was make her sit there and make her fold all of those papers and put all of those papers in all of those envelopes and sign them off. So I sat there. It was so boring, horrible. Then I went to the next section. They were like, yeah, you need to stamp this. Then the next section, yeah, you need to delete all of these files, and so on and so on. But something that was really cool that I saw was mm, my father had a business partner, and the business partner apparently was never really in the office. My dad was. And there's always 2 different types of people, the one that says hi to everyone and the one that thinks that you're the last Coke on the desert. So it was really cool to see that everyone was so chill with my dad. I was like, oh, Mr. Mondragon, this, and that. And he would come down, he would talk to people, he would randomly invite a whole floor to eat. And it was just very inviting, not really like, oh, I'm the boss and you guys deal with whatever your tasks are. So that really was a cool experience to see. And the second time that I went to his office, my dad was like, I want you to create a business. Here you have a lot of clients. What can you do to earn money in my office? And so I went to Carulla, which is like a Walgreens, and I got a bunch of bags of candy, and I was ripping them off totally now looking back. Because they were like each candy was like 25 cents and I was selling them for like $4, $5.
Man, that's a good markup. That's a fantastic markup.
It was it was it was it was tough. Like people were like, "Oh, how much? 5,000 pesos por eso?" And I'm like, "Yes." They're like, "Man, Oh,
the things we have to do for the
for the
boss's
daughter
daughter.
of the yeah.
My goodness, taking
I
advantage. It's a good business.
went I went place by place with my bag of candy, selling candy to
Whoever
all
didn't,
three floors.
whoever didn't pay, HR will be right behind them saying, "Hey,
I
we gotta have a meeting. You forgot
you
to buy
owe
candy
five
from.
you owe $5 from
How
last
much do you
incident.
care for your job, by the way? You want to be here next quarter? You should
But
buy the
yeah,
candy."
it was
And
a really, really cool, you know, I've
listeners,
never seen so much money in my life.
we're
Like,
joking, by the way, in case
yeah.
anybody thinks that's happening. This is
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
part of the HR and everything's a joke and such.
Yeah.
But no, it's again working with family allows us to have that relationship. And right now, to this day, we actually I have hired family members to work with us,
Hmm.
and you speak highly of them. So
Oh, yes.
we have a success story.
Yes. Yes.
We've had to have some discussions on communications, arranging some things, which is normal. You have to set your boundaries. So now we're getting to our next section of the podcast today is some tips and best practices. So it kind of connects to what we discussed on episodes 1 and 2 when we first launched the podcast about having clear job descriptions, understanding of things, because
Yep.
it leaves nothing for assumptions. And especially with family members, especially if you have a close relationship with them, they might want to finagle and mix personal with business, and that can be very dangerous
Yeah.
because they don't understand where the line is, and they're not able to fluctuate between one and the other. So setting boundaries is very important at the start. And you want to share anything about your experience of working with some of the family members that we have working with us?
Um, we have worked with different family members. Damn. Um, I love it. I love it. Your family's freaking awesome. I love them all. They're all super smart. Obviously, we had, rocks blocking the road here and there, but communication again, communication is key. And once we align, everything flows. I actually, with one of Andres's family member, which I work directly with all the time, I think I have never hyped up someone in a job ever. His professionalism, he's just on point. He understands ideas, he does research, he's just the type of person that I would hire. I truly, and I tell him, and I sometimes I like to scare him just because little inside jokes here and there. I kind of give some tension, so I kind of go, you did this and you did that, and then I just leave it hanging, and then he goes, oh my God, you didn't like it? And then I sent a bunch of emojis dancing. He's like, you're a badass. I freaking love it. And he's like, oh my God, you scared me. I love doing that. He like freaks out. But it's honestly, shout out to Kevin. I have never bragged so much about a coworker.
Yep.
Never. In any of my jobs, actually. Ever.
No, we're happy to have
Well,
you, Kevin.
we had a graphic designer that I really truly synced in with a lot. One of our first graphic designers, and she was not a
She's like
family
family,
member.
but she was like
She was
family.
not a family member, but she was like my left rib, in my life. And there had to be, boundaries placed at first, very clear boundaries. But then I don't know. She was like heaven. She was flowing, and
It's that
she would
chemistry.
just understand.
Yeah.
Like I would just say moo, and she was like, "Oh, you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with these three colors?" And I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "I got you." Kevin is
It's
exactly the same way. I say 1, 2, 3, and he goes, "I got it. A B C D E F G. There you go." And I'm like, "Oh, I love you."
it comes down to that chemistry. It comes down to the
Yeah.
chemistry, and it comes down to again set expectations. And one thing I also want to retouch is I also share that belief that your dad does. It's the boss should be the first one in, the last one out, because
Yeah.
I'll never ask anybody to do something that I am not willing to do myself. And
Well,
it's
that's
very
the
important to drive
difference.
that. It's very important to drive that because that shows the team that, oh man, if the boss is here
Mhm.
2 o'clock in the morning, We got to get the server up online because the customer has business tomorrow at 8.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's that speaks volumes. It's not like, oh, the boss is asleep and we're here, working.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. And
Yeah.
at times, realistically, you can't be everywhere at once. There's different fires that happen at the same time. But through those experiences, they know that, oh, he'll be here if he
Yeah.
could, you know.
Yeah.
And another shout out that I want to do is for Alejandro. Alejandro, our IT support a specialist too. Some of our customers interact with him, and
He's also a web developer, so he has
and
multiple hats too.
yes, he does. He wants to grow into the web development space, which we welcome. We welcome vertical growth,
Growth.
as we discussed with
Mm-hmm.
you in episodes 1 and 2 and 3, because it's important. It's important to feel motivated. It's important to feel that you're not just stuck in that box. That there's
Yeah.
something you can climb up and
Explore.
reach. Especially again, family members. We've been very blessed to have them and be able to work with them. And yes, have there been some rough patches? Again, just like in a family, a work is also like a family environment. There's always going to be a
Yeah.
rough patch, but it's just having that clear communication, having that clear relationship environment and guidelines to take it to, and being able to call out when things are good and when things are bad.
Yeah.
Because people don't want to be called out every time you do something wrong. It's always good to say, hey, you know what, Kevin? Oh, you know what, Alejandro? Hey, you know what, Mallory? Great job. That's a fantastic job. It just, again, it goes back down to building that team sentiment
Yeah.
that we were experienced early on in life. Strategies for conflict resolution, because I was just mentioning briefly, yeah, there's times, there's patches. So luckily, we've been able to not have any of those, explosive things.
Yeah.
We've had some serious meetings where I had to kind of remind people, their responsibilities, their work hours, and things, because they get lax or lack of communication. It goes back to how key that is, because I am not everywhere at all times. So sometimes family members or just employees in general are working late, but they forgot to update their task. They forgot to update their status. And I'm not aware they're working late. So when I go into the office and I start checking people and where everybody's at, I don't see people in the office 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and I see no updates. It gets a little frustrating. So communication is key, because a lot of the times where I've had to sit down in one-on-ones or group environments to remind people of the responsibilities, the time we start our work and what we have to do, they come back and say, oh, but I'm working on this project. Well, if I don't know you're doing that, and it requires you to work 2 3 hours extra at night, and you're making that up by coming in 3 hours later, it'll be great to know, because that way, if a customer calls and I
Yeah.
deflect the call or assign the call to you, the customer is not going to be waiting for 3 hours until you come in, because I wasn't aware you're there. So just those easy reminders, because sometimes we just get so, oh, here's my brother, here's my cousin, here's my sister, here's my mom, here's my dad, whatever. That is just kind of gets a
It's
little
gonna
in a
be okay, and it's gonna be more flexible,
correct.
but
And
the rules apply for everyone.
yeah. And then one of the big ones, which I have never experienced acute tech, is personal issues. We've always been very blessed at keeping personal issues away. The one thing I do tell people is that we're here to assist them, which whatever we can guide them and assistance
Mm-hmm.
they might need it, professional development. So based on that, we kind of touched the base, and we've been very lucky based on my own experience that I've seen from different places that I worked. We've been very lucky with the people that we've been able to bring on board. We've had some
Yeah.
hires that didn't work out. We have some hires that didn't deliver. They sold us the moon and the sky, and then nothing happened. And we've had some great, rock stars. We have some great designers. We have some great web
Yeah.
developers,
Writers.
writers. Writers right now, they're getting their game gear back online, and because we were
Yeah,
having
but
some
we
production.
had one writer, one special writer,
Oh my God, I wish she was. Yes, I know you're talking about. We wish her well wherever she is at,
special angel. She's a
and she was
special
great.
human,
She was.
and it just life didn't make it happen.
No,
But
sometimes
I do think of her. I do think of her.
you
She's a
just made me.
she's a
Yeah,
good professional. Like she has a
man.
talent.
She wrote. She was. She had this. She has this
Yeah.
talent that
Yeah.
she's able to take the business voice
Yeah.
and put it out there, and everything that she wrote. Oh, I do
It
miss
was
her
just
writing.
perfect.
Now
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. We wish you,
Yeah.
hopefully, you're doing
If
well.
you ever
If
listen
you
to
ever
this.
listen to this, please call us. We're still interested. Um, we'll welcome back
Yeah.
with open arms
Yeah.
and such. And hopefully, life
It's great.
it's doing
It's
better for
better.
you. We do have some questions that we received for some of our listeners for this episode. How do you deal with favoritism?
Ooh, we have none.
So in here we don't have any. Even for other places where I worked, I've been very lucky that they always had clauses for favoritism. I recall
Mm.
different places where I will hire an engineer, systems engineer, network engineer, a telecom engineer, whichever. And they were such a great fit and everything that they'll say, "Oh, you think my wife could work here with me?" And I'm like, "You know what? You're so great. I'm sure your wife is fantastic as well." HR had those policies in place to say, "Nope, she can work
Mm-hmm.
with the company, but not in the same department. So we'll have to
Yeah.
work somewhere else, or he will have to work somewhere else." So we kind of adopted the same thing here in reference to not having that favoritism and such. Like I said, we do have family members that work with us, but if they don't perform, we treat them as a regular team
Yeah.
member and say, well, you're not up to par. First warning, second warning, third warning, and then thank you very much. We appreciate your assistance. We wish you the best of luck, but
Yeah.
this was not the fit for you, per se. Anything you want to add to the question?
No, we truly have none.
Yeah, we haven't had that experience
Yeah.
ourselves. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it comes from uh, picking up the experience from other companies and such, where they had those things because again,
Yeah.
anytime you see a rule like no skating or no, because somebody did it, they
Yeah.
probably broke their head and now they have to put a sign of it. So something
Exactly.
happened to all those businesses and they just adopt these policies and stuff just to avoid headaches and
Just
liabilities.
drama.
Yeah. Then the other question is, what are some warning signs that work with family that might not be a good idea? So
Oh,
you want to take this one first?
yes. So I have a very close case of a family member hired another family member to work. And you really need to be, well, this is my point of view. You gotta be brutal when classifying the person if it fits for the kind of business that you have. Just because it's your family member doesn't mean that, oh yeah, we're gonna do a favor and I'm gonna believe in you, but deep down you know that person just doesn't have the discipline for that, or it just doesn't, because you know the person. So in this case, the family member that hired the other family member is dependent on them to show up to meetings, to do tasks, to follow up with people. And this family member, because of their relationship, bloodline relationship, oh, I can do it later, or I can take a week, or I can take 2 weeks, and I won't wear my uniform, and I will work from bed, and I'll show up whenever I want because of the type of bloodline that we have. You are not allowed to kick me out because how or why would you kick someone? Why would you kick me out? Kick someone else out, but I am your direct bloodline. You can't do that to me. And then they start using um, the manipulation. So I think that's a sign. When you see someone saying, oh, but I did this for you one time, ooh, it's going to go really bad. Because if you have someone that knows you so well, that you guys are a family, that you guys are home, and that person can easily take situations where they ever helped you in the past, they collaborated for you, or they attended to you, or something personal, and they twist it for their gain so they don't get affected by the mistake they made. So, oh, you can reprint me because remember that I helped you when you were really bad with money, or remember that when you were really sick, I was the one in the hospital. And that makes the one that hired family member trapped. She's not performing, he's not performing, but I can't do anything because that makes me a bad family member. That makes me that I don't appreciate my family. And it becomes a mind game. Starts affecting the business, starts affecting the relationship, and it starts affecting your mind. So when someone has the ability to rub on someone's face to keep that benefit of working with you, that's not good. It's not good.
And to add to that, some of the red flags, to go back to the question, it's what are some signs that working with family members is not a good idea? A lot of the times we know our family members already. We already have a perception of their strengths, their weaknesses, their characters, how they treat their parents, their siblings, because those are little insights of how they might behave in the workplace. Not again, I've met some individuals that are two different people when they get home and when they're at work. So it's not always, again, it's not always the same case point, but in general, when you have an understanding of who that individual is as your brother, sister, cousin, family member, they will behave the same way at work. If you know he's a problem person, a problem individual, don't think that he's not going to be a problem individual at work. But a lot of the times, the way I see it is they're lacking something, they're missing something. And maybe if you're able to have the time and you want to take that mentor role, I've seen success stories where people go in there into a workplace with a crazy attitude and everything else, and they leave a better person because the individual family member that run the business took the time to kind of help them understand what they were doing. So it's the red flags go into what you know from the individual, what their attitude, how they behave themselves around family, and their strengths and weaknesses. Those for me are a great indicator of how they're going to behave at work, and whether there's somebody worth giving a chance to as well, because not everybody's worth, quote unquote, saving and such. Because there's people that just don't want to change. They're so entrenched in their beliefs or whatever they want to be.
Their ways.
That's who they are, and they're defined by that. So we're getting to the end of this episode.
We are.
As we said, dear listeners, today's episode was a little more relaxed.
Well, not short.
For us, it's short. I don't know how we're already at 40 something minutes. It's crazy, but we are trying hard to keep them down. It flows like we said almost on every other episode. Is we don't follow a script. We just have an idea, an outline of what we want to talk about, and then we just start recording and go and start going. So today's episode, family members in the workplace, pros and cons, what worked, what doesn't work, what are some great initiatives or tips to have and how to manage. We talked about setting boundaries, conflict resolution, and as well as answering some of the listener questions. So, thank you for tuning in. It's episode 10. Again, I can't believe we're here. Thank you all for joining. And we'd like to hear from you. Any feedback, any episodes, or any ideas you think we could discuss, or if you want to be a guest, reach out to us. Find us on our socials and send us a DM, and we're more than happy to get in touch.
Have a beautiful day, beautiful night, or wherever you're listening from. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care, all. Thank you, Mallory. We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Bye.